looks like these people have just left. The paint is fresh. It's really spooky. We normally think of rising seas or disastrous hurricanes when we talk of climate change. But here, in this Himalayan village, something's happening, and the impact of this could be significantly greater than any natural disaster. This is one of over 1,000 ghost villages in Uttarakhand state in northern India. It may look green and luscious, but life here has become almost impossible.
बाहर जाने की क्या जरूरत है हमें अगर हमारे बच्चे यही अगर हमको यही रोजगार मिल जाता तो यहाँ तो कुछ है ही नहीं.
Uttarakhand is one example. New research suggests that globally, climate migration could become much bigger than anything we've previously thought.
There's nobody who's not going to be affected by this issue.
New projections say that in just 50 years, 1 in every 3 people on Earth could need to move house, as climate change becomes an increasingly significant factor. So how is all this going to impact us in the near future? Is there a way to reverse this trend of migration? This is Rajendra Bisht, who used to live in this village of People Koti. But his family home, of course, didn't always look like this.
आज की परिस्थिति यह है कि इस घर को देख के हमें रोना आता है.
जब आप यहाँ थे, आप खुश थे?
बहुत ज़्यादा मैम, बहुत ज़्यादा. उस टाइम तो काफ़ी अच्छा लगा था. वो दिन बचपन के अब दोबारा काफ़ी लौट के आ नहीं सकते हैं. लेकिन वो लाइफ बहुत अच्छी थी. मतलब घूमना फिरना, यहाँ रहना और ठंडी हवाएं. हमारा जाने का कारण, मुख्य कारण यहाँ पे है रोज़गार. और दूसरी बात है यहाँ पे खेती हुई. और खेती का यहाँ पे जो मुख्य स्रोत है, मतलब बरसात पे डिपेंड करती है यहाँ पे. और ये काफ़ी पौष्टिक भी होता है. ये देखिए मैम, ये पूरी ज़मीन बंजर हो चुकी है. आज से कुछ समय पहले इसमें मतलब बहुत अनाज हुआ करता था.
Apart from an unemployment crisis here in the hills, the change in the monsoon is playing an increasingly important role in people's lives here. According to reports, 20 years ago, the rainy season used to be 60 days long, and now it only rains around 50. Which means that sometimes it rains less and crops that are grown here, like wheat and maize, can dry out. And when it does rain, it pours more intensely over a shorter period, so fields can get flooded. The intense rain is now called cloudbursts, which have not only led to farms being washed out, but also homes and neighborhoods. Just last year, more than 50 people were killed in landslide-related accidents in this state of Uttarakhand. So people like Rajendra are moving in search of a better life and can be categorized as climate migrants, although
It's a difficult thing to define who's a climate migrant and who's an economic migrant, because sometimes the lines are quite blurry.
Filiz Garib looks into all the reasons people migrate and says the climate is playing an increasingly important role, but not always in the same way.
Whenever there's a big event, like a big hurricane, we might say, okay, these are climate migrants because their homes have been destroyed and people are leaving as a result of that. But most of the time, it's not as clear-cut as this. There might be a drought that's been ongoing for many years that restricts people's economic livelihoods, and then these people start to migrate. Our data are not accurate, and our predictions are even less accurate because, as you know, even climate change projections vary quite a bit. It's complicated. But given kind of what climate change predictions are, we expect the level of migration we have today to increase for sure over time.
The numbers that the few studies do quote are dramatic. The latest estimate published by the World Bank says that in just South Asia, Africa, and Latin America, 140 million people could migrate internally by 2050. One international study even predicts that globally by 2070, 1 in 3 people could potentially be displaced by climate-induced changes. Hotspots include densely populated places like Indonesia and Bangladesh. But it is affecting the global north too. 60% of the Netherlands could be flooded if its artificial defenses are overwhelmed. And in the US, wildfires and other disasters are already rendering over 1 million people homeless each year. Heat is another big driver. At the moment, only around 1% of land is uninhabitable for humans. But as the planet heats up at the current rate, that figure could go up to 19% in just half a century. And the band of perfectly livable conditions is slowly moving north. So people are and will be on the move. and this is having a big impact, especially on those that are forced to move.
यहाँ पे की तो लाइफ मैम, अगर ये थोड़ा रोज़गार हो, रहन सहन इसकी वजह से, तो मतलब यहाँ पे तो बहुत टेंशन की लाइफ है शहर के अंदर, क्योंकि काम का प्रेशर इतना होता है और कंपटीशन ऐसा है कि मतलब आपको जी दौड़ना है घोड़े की तरह या गधे की तरह, दिन भर काम पे लगा रहना है। और मतलब कब बचपन से बुढ़ापा आ जाए, काम करते करते कुछ पता नहीं चलता है। ये है यहाँ पे दिक्कत। मैं यहाँ पे कंस्ट्रक्शन का काम देखता हूँ। काम ठीक है, अच्छा है काम। अब अच्छा हो ना हो फिर भी तो करना पड़ेगा। मतलब मैं घर चलाने के लिए, पेट पालने के लिए कुछ ना कुछ तो करना ही पड़ेगा।
Rajendra lives in a poorer part of Ramnagar town, among other migrants from the mountains. It used to be a slum but has recently developed into concrete houses. Most migrants live in poorer conditions, at least when they first move. And these conditions make them vulnerable and potential migrants once again. Comparatively, Indian slum dwellers can experience heat up to 6 degrees warmer than housing societies nearby. And in towns like this, flash floods and landslides are more likely to affect homes constructed haphazardly on floodplains. Not only that, but scarcity of resources is being linked to increased conflict around the world. And climate-induced migration could add to it.
It's really difficult to predict the future, but scarcity is going to increase everywhere for all of us. We're going to see, maybe nationalist parties increasing. We're going to see more conflicts around the world.
Syria is one example where some researchers have argued that climate change, though not the main cause at all, had a role to play in the war and eventual migration crisis. A long drought preceded the war, worsening economic and political tensions and leading to rising discontent. But it's not just the people moving or those affected by the move, but outmigration has an impact on the people and places left behind too. And what are the specific changes that have happened in this region that have caused this?
If the mountain people are migrating or have migrated out of the mountain, then who is going to take care of the mountain?
Prakash Tiwari is a researcher and professor who advocates for reverse migration in the lower Himalayan villages.
Situations should be created amicably, viably, that the mountain people should be allowed, encouraged, motivated to stay in the mountain. The people who are in the bureaucracy, who are in the political system, they cannot take care of the mountain. The mountain resources are now being exploited because the local people who are educated, intellectual, they are moving out of the mountain. Yeah. The simple rural people are in the villages. So they are being compelled by the corporate to sell out their land at the throwover prices. This is leading to the exploitation of the very precious, critical mountain resources.
Loss of sustainable agriculture and forests in this region has effects downstream. With no one to stand up against the degradation of the mountain ecosystems, over 1 billion people that live in the highly populated plains below face a threat. So what can be done? While migration remains high in Uttarakhand, the neighboring state of Himachal Pradesh has come up with some solutions that can work. Farmers have begun developing diverse agricultural practices to bring in revenue and adapt to the changing climate going forward. The state has also promoted sustainable tourism to ensure that local people can earn a living and stay behind. Globally, governments are trying to lessen the immediate impact of climate change to keep people out of danger. For example, on the island of Fiji, the government relocated people to higher ground in a flood-prone area. The Indonesian government has been building sea walls to keep the water out. Apart from making people stay, governments need to be prepared for mitigating conflict and scarcity as people move internally and internationally. But it can't be only up to the most affected countries to finance adaptation to the changes.
The human contributions to climate change are mostly done by advanced nations. We need to prepare for discussions around responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to address these issues? Is it only the countries who are experiencing this, or is it the countries that have contributed to where we ended up today?
At last year's COP26, industrialized countries pledged more funding for adaptation-focused projects, around 3 times the previous year's budget. Such funding will remain on the COP agenda as it still falls short of what is needed. But it's a start.
तो आपको कभी लगता है कि आपको वापस आना है?
बिल्कुल मैम, मेरा बहुत दिल करता है कि मैं आऊँ यहाँ और रहूँ अब, लेकिन कुछ दिक्कतें हैं उस वजह से नहीं आ पाते, लेकिन कुछ समय बाद मेरा दिल कहता है कि मैं यहाँ आऊँ और रहूँ यहाँ गांव में अपने.
But people will still migrate for whatever reason. That needs to be acknowledged, and pathways for the move and integration need to be made a priority. And of course, the biggest elephant in the room is climate change, and that's the thing that needs to be addressed to reduce the suffering of millions and eventually billions of people. Let us know your thoughts on this massive migration to come. And don't forget to come back to our channel every Friday. I promise it's not always this depressing.